Buffalo, New York. Dan sells cars, and he does it so well.
It is never too late to become the man that you've always wanted to be.
This month, he again becomes the seller of the month. All that's left is to take a picture for the website and get a bonus. But he's not after the money. He gives the title and bonus to his colleague. Dan hurries home to his wife because it's their anniversary. He's fine and in a good mood. Dan loves his wife Jessica and his kids. Truth, kids try their best to ruin that mood. But Dan is firm and decisive, which means everything is going according to his plan. Every anniversary, they go to an amusement park for a roller coaster ride. They met in this park 18 years ago. Jessica hints to Dan that living according to a schedule, plans, and unchanging traditions is a bit stressful. She wants life to be more spontaneous. Later, they kiss at the fountain where they first met. A group of local bullies snap their photo without permission. Dan asks the guy to delete the picture.
Take it down. Make me.
But in return, he is mocked. Dan is patient. He stays calm even when the guy spills his drink on him.
Loser like him get a girl as fine as you.
On their way home, Jessica proves to him that this is what he should have done, but deep down, she's disappointed. At home, Dan takes a shower and relaxes. Then he changes the baby's diaper like a pro. Next day, Jessica spends in the gym. She boxes on a punching bag and meets Gwen there. The girl can't hit a punching bag, but she's doing great at her travel agency. Jessica shares a thought with her. She says they have a family life without adventure and that their family life is uneventful. Her husband is happy in this swamp, but she has always dreamed of traveling. Gwen is in a hurry for her flight, and as she leaves, gives Jessica her agency card. Dan goes to the store with the baby. The baby is strapped to his chest, so Dan can pick out the best diapers and grab his favorite ice cream. Suddenly, Dan notices an aggressive stranger heading toward him. He attacks, and Dan has no choice but to defend himself. Dan unexpectedly shows his combat skills and beat the soul out of the attacker. He then picks up the fallen diapers and walks calmly to the checkout. Dan gets home, opens the stash, and gets passports, money, and guns. Passports are expired, so he calls his friend and gets new documents for the whole family. The deadline is 3 days, and the meeting point is Las Vegas. His buddy tells him that his wife should have been told long ago that he is a retired government agent. Dan quickly packs his bags and gathers his family. He finds his daughter and son, picks up his wife. Dan invites her to Vegas. It's as spontaneous as she wanted it to be. Jessica is so happy that she doesn't even notice that they are being followed in a black car. But crafty Dan spots the car and professionally evades surveillance. However, Jeep appears again. Dan realizes there's a tracker on their car. He stops by his office and hides in the car service. Dan quickly removes the tracking device and attaches it to a colleague's car. The pursuers stupidly rush after a colleague. He calmly gets into the car and the trip to Vegas begins. At some point, Dan notices that every member of his family is stuck on the phone. He knows that they can be tracked down again by their phones. Dan collects all the phones and throws them into the river. He explains this as a forced measure that will help unite the family. Dan and his family stop at a roadside motel. His son is recognized by a stranger. After all, he is a famous player, streamer in the world of computer games. He is famous as Killboy, weird nickname, but it is okay. Dan sees a girl taking a picture with his son. This is dangerous, because the photo will be on Instagram and they will be found immediately. Man tells his wife that all the rooms are taken.
No, they're all booked. We gotta keep going.
Really?
Yeah.
And the family drives on. They are tracked down by bikers on the highway at night. Dan turns on calm music in the salon so that the sleeping family does not wake up. After, he begins to break away from the chase and shoot back. Dan gets rid of the bandits and drives all night until they end up in a neighboring state. Her daughter wants to study at the college of this state, so it's a great opportunity to rest. It's very interesting and well relaxing, except that gangsters find them in college as well. While the family participates in tours, Dan destroys a chemistry lab, trying to neutralize a huge evil bandit. Dan takes down the bandit and is ready to move on. Meanwhile, his daughter went to say hi to her boyfriend. She finds his friend in the company of a half-naked lady. Girl is angry and almost crying and doesn't want to go to this college anymore. Dan realizes that lecturing will be unnecessary, but he knows painful techniques and is happy to show his daughter a trick or two. The girl returns to the trader and successfully gives change. The satisfied family moves on. Next day at some point, Dan is alone with his son. Son tells him that playing shooters makes him more confident. People love him in the game. Plus, it builds reflexes and reactions. Killboy wants to prove himself and invites his father to play laser tag against each other. Dan accepts the challenge. Daddy wins and deserves his son's respect. Vegas is one pull away. Family eats breakfast and leaves. In the evening, they are greeted by the lights of Sin City. While the family is amazed at the king-size suite, Dan meets up with a buddy and gets new passports from him. Dan realizes that they have to fly to Canada in the morning under new names. But before, he must tell the truth to his wife. Dan and Jessica leave the kids in room and go down to the restaurant. They don't know that the kids didn't stay in the room as they were told. There's a gamers tournament nearby, so Killboy can't miss the event. Dan tries to tell his wife the truth at the dinner, but all he manages to do is let her know that he speaks 2 foreign languages, including French. Dan realizes he's afraid to upset Jessica. He tells her everything, but in French.
Je ne sais pas si tu m'aimeras encore.
The woman doesn't understand anything, but she is even more excited by the new image of her husband. Little later, Dan decides to call the kids, but no one answers in the room. Kids are at game tournament and Killboy is already in the final battle against the other team. Dan and Jessica return to the room, but see blanket-covered bodies in the beds. The couple does not notice the switch or that a stranger has entered the room. A stranger takes Jessica hostage and threatens Dan to kill his whole family. He doesn't have time to say anything. Dan is very fast. With a knife in his eye socket, Dan shuts Bandit's mouth. Jessica is shocked and very angry with her husband. The couple notices that the kids are not in the bed. They find out about the tournament and rush there. Dan takes kids and explains that they urgently need to leave the city, and he is a former assassin who is being stalked by former colleagues and want to kill him. Kids find it funny. They don't understand why their colleagues from the car dealership would kill the wimp. Dan has no time to explain. He pulls out a gun and puts several bullets into his attacker. Kids run out of questions. Dan tells his family everything, which provokes their righteous anger. Jessica thinks he has quietly hated them all for all 18 years because he has been forced to live the quiet life of a model family man. She ends up leaving her husband. Jessica calls her travel agent buddy, Gwen, and books a trip for her and the kids. They arrive at the airport, where a charter flight is already waiting for them. Jessica is greeted by her agency buddy Gwen herself. She invites everyone to board the plane. Gwen asks Jessica to help her return the favor. She should deal with her ex, who at first seemed to love her, but then dumped her and married someone else. In that moment, Jessica realizes that she is the someone else. Gwen won't let them leave the plane. The rest of the gangsters are close by. They all want Jessica's husband. They call Dan and ask him to come to the north of Vegas. Of course, if he wants to save his loved ones. In an abandoned high-rise, he encounters the main bandit and his men. Bandit is his father McCaffrey, who is eager to get his son back into the old business. So, he gives Dan a choice. Dan comes back to old business and never see his family again, or they will kill all of them. The man is forced to choose the first option. The chief asks his assistant, Pyrrhus, to escort the family. Jessica and the children, accompanied by the bandit, enter the elevator. Kids start urging their mom to become Wonder Woman, eliminate Pyrrhus, and go back for their dad. Pyrrhus stands nearby and listens to their plans. He even feels a little embarrassed. Jessica suddenly decides to change the baby's diaper. Elevator doors open on some floor. Jessica smacks Pyrrhus in the face with a diaper and pushes him down the stairs. She grabs his gun, which he dropped before his flight, and heads out to rescue her husband. But he had already freed himself, because almost all the bandits had gone down to the first floor. However, McCaffrey notices that Pyrrhus is missing. He realizes that Dan has already been freed. Daddy Bandit rounds up all his goons and sends them back to the high-rise. Dan sends his wife and kids to the roof, asks his son to keep an eye on everyone with a drone, and goes to neutralize everyone himself. He's doing great, except his dad notices the drone and sends Gwen to find them. She goes up to the roof and confronts Jessica. Before the fight starts, Gwen reminds her that she eliminated dictators while Jessica was changing diapers. She says maybe we shouldn't start? While downstairs, Dan is trying to straighten out the last of the villains. 2 women of the same man clash on the roof. Only Dad is left downstairs. He has enough brains to shoot the drone and fight with his son in hand-to-hand combat, and things are much worse on the roof. Gwen kicks Jessica, throws her against the walls, hurls her off the balcony, and drops partitions on her. But Jessica proves to be tougher than she looked. She falls from the balcony to the level below. Jessica picks up the bamboo trunk and is about to perform a pole vault to jump to Gwen. There is a sense of pride in such heroism. Jessica sprints, pole points, pushes off, and the pole breaks. However, that's no reason to give up. There's more wreckage to come. Jessica grabs a bamboo pole and throws it at Gwen like a spear. It's a spear, and it stabs her in the chest. And it's not going well downstairs. There's a grandpa already pointing a gun at his son, but then a family comes running out from around the corner. Daughter asks her grandfather to stop. After all, you can always start over and become a family. Killer claims that her speeches won't make him feel better, and daughter says she was just distracting him. Dan reaches for the iron pipe and kicks the bandit to the ground. 6 months pass. Dan works as an instructor, training cash collectors. Jessica works as a physical educator education teacher. Her daughter has returned to the school newspaper and plans to become a journalist again. It was her report that gave the cops the whole of her grandfather's criminal group. Sun was allowed to play shooters once in a while. Killboy is needed in Twitch. Ahead is a trip to California, to a new college. The family gets into a modern motorhome. Dan traditionally takes everyone's phones away, and a new journey begins.